So one related concept to this is kind of why do we actually engage in market transactions? How does buying and selling take place? And the answer is that a transaction is only going to take place if it benefits both parties, if it benefits both the buyer and the seller. And this gives rise to a couple of useful concepts that you'll use quite a lot, and these are called consumer and producer surplus. Let's take firstly what's called consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is a very simple idea. It's just that idea that suppose that you're planning on going to buy yourself a new dress. You've got a big party coming up, and you go down to the shop, and you've got one in mind. And you're willing to pay. You would pay for this little black dress. You're willing to pay 150 quid. And you got that price in mind. You go down there and you think, if I find it for 150 quid, I'll buy it. That's the most that I'm willing to pay. Suppose what happens is you go down the shop and you discover that there's a sale on. And actually the little black dress that you wanted, you can buy it for 100 quid. So the actual price is 100 quid, but you're willing to pay 150 quid. What that means is that there is £50 of happiness, extra happiness relative to how happy you thought you were going to be. You thought you were going to be fairly happy buying that dress for 100 quid, 150 quid, because it's cool. But you get it cheaper than that, so you have £50 of extra value. And that's consumer surplus. And consumer surplus is defined as the difference between the price you would be willing to pay. So it's what you would have paid. The difference between the price you'd be willing to pay and the price that you do pay. And obviously, consumer surplus is generally unlikely to be negative, on the basis that you're not going to pay a price that's higher than you're willing to. In theory, it could be the case. It could be the case that you got down to the shop, you discovered that the price was, £170, and then somebody came up with a gun and pointed it at your head and said, you've got to buy it. In that case, your consumer surplus would be minus £20. But you're not going to see that. It's not something that generally happens. So we can show this. We can show this on a diagram. So again, that's the quantity of little black dresses. That's the price. That's demand, and this is you. You were willing to pay £150, for that dress. But the conditions of supply meant, that actually the equilibrium price was £100. And that distance there is your £50 of consumer surplus. So the difference between what you'd be willing to pay and the price. That's what you'd be willing to pay, W. That's the price, P. Somebody else doesn't like the dress as much as you. This person here, we'll call them friend number one. They don't like it that much. They would only have been willing to pay £120 for the same dress. And if they buy it, which would be very annoying, but if they did, they would have £20 of consumer surplus. That's your 50, that's their 20. One of your other friends, they really like black, and so they would have, we'll call them friend number two. They would have been willing to pay 180 quid for the dress. So if they buy it, then they would have been willing to pay 80. They do pay 100. Their consumer surplus, is £80. Now, in principle, therefore, we can add up all of the consumer surpluses. That plus 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 that, and that triangle is the total area of consumer surplus in equilibrium. And we can work that out very easily. If you wanted to put a financial value on it, suppose that we had 100 dresses. Well, all we've got to do is in equilibrium. All we've got to do is work out the area of that triangle. Let's suppose that's right up there. £190 is the highest price somebody would be prepared to pay. So what we got is, I'll just remove those for now. The equilibrium price is £100. the highest price that anyone would pay would be £190. So what's the area of that triangle? Well, the way you work out the area of a triangle is very simple. You work out the area of the rectangle and then divide by 2. So all we have to do is say, well, that distance there is 90. There's 100 dresses bought. That's £9,000. And then to find the area of a triangle, we divide by 2. So consumer surplus is £4,500. We can do the same for producers. So a producer will only be willing to sell if they can make more for it than it costs. So the same concept applies to producers. And for producer surplus, therefore, it's the difference between the minimum price that they would have accepted, the minimum price that the producer would accept, and the actual price. So it's the same idea, but it's just for the producer instead of for the consumer. And we do the same thing, yeah? So, for the first, again, imagine this first little black dresses. There's the first little black dress. We said that the price, is £100. For the first one, for whatever reason, he's willing to sell it for £20. Therefore, for that unit, they're making £80 worth of producer surplus. For the second dress, the marginal cost is 30 quid. They're selling it for 100, so they've got producer surplus of £70, and so on. So producer surplus, again, is the difference between the price, that's demand, the difference between the price and the supply curve, because supply is marginal cost. So effectively, it's the difference between the price and the marginal cost of producing each one of those units. And similarly, that one can be worked out in the same way as we worked out consumer surplus. So suppose, so we had, let's suppose this is our situation, that's £100. We said that was £190. We said that 100 dresses were being bought, and let's call that £20. The minimum price anyone would ever accept is £20. So producer surplus, again, we just need to work out the area of this triangle. To do that, we work out the area of that rectangle and we divide by 2. So it's £80 times 100 units divided by 2. Producer surplus is £4,000. So if we take these two things together, then it shows all of the benefit that consumers have gained. Their supply, the society has gained. There is supply, which is marginal cost. There's demand, which is marginal utility. There's consumer surplus. There's producer surplus, and that's 100 dresses. And what we can see is that actually, if we are at point E, the overall level of consumer and producer surplus combined, and that's called community surplus. So community surplus is simply consumer surplus plus producer surplus. It's as high as it can be. And what's good about all of these dresses is this is what we would have been willing to pay. That's what the demand curve shows. That's the marginal utility that each one of those dresses would have given. That's the cost of the resources used. That's how much it's cost us in terms of scarce resources. And every single one of those dresses has added more to our utility, more to our welfare, than it has cost. And that area there is community surplus, and it's maximised at the equilibrium price. And that's why allowing free markets to operate is supposed to be a good thing.